It just got very real for the Toronto Blue Jays as following a new report dropping earlier today surrounding Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and his future in Toronto. We have heard from both Ross Atkins and one other very notable reporter as it pertains to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. getting extended before tomorrow's opening day. We're going to break that down and discuss what it means going forward as things are really starting to pick up. But before we get into it, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. Your guys' support has been absolutely fantastic. And thank you guys for that as we continue to push towards our goal of 20,000 subscribers. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be with you all season long. Bear with the setup again. I'm in Toronto. I'm going to be at tomorrow's home opener. So until Sunday, bear with the setup. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot to go over today. Let's dive right into it. Now, a few different things to go over here. Let's start with the report that I covered in the video just a few hours ago. We have some new updates as it pertains to that specific report. But in case you missed it, I will recap. So Mike Rodriguez, fairly notable reporter, especially among Dominican players and extensions, said, according to my sources, Toronto and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. are doing everything they can to reach an agreement before opening day. They were in discussions today, and my source says that they were talking about more than $550 million for 14 to 15 years. So this was a new report that dropped from Mike Rodriguez, and this really had everybody pretty excited, pretty, ready to go, especially given the fact that opening day is now less than 24 hours away, about, a bit, under 20 hours away at the time of recording. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at a point now where not only is this getting serious, Ross Atkins, it was media day today. We heard a bunch of different things. We'll have more videos covering some of the other quotes as well here, but I have a bunch for you in this video. Ross Atkins came out and broke the silence surrounding Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And he said, and if you look at the press conference, Hazel May tweeted it, I have hope that we're going to reach an agreement. That's how I feel. Ross Atkins declined to comment on whether the front office had spoken to Vladdy's camp since the February 18th deadline, stating not helpful to speak publicly about negotiations. Ladies and gentlemen, and if you saw the grin on his face in the press conference, this is very encouraging because this all stemmed from the report from Mike Rodriguez revealing that, again, the Jays have re-engaged with talks, re-engaged in negotiations, and that things are coming to not necessarily, a conclusion, but there's a good chance that either later tonight or, of course, into tomorrow morning, that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. gets extended with the Jays. And it all started with this, but because Media Day was on, people were able, these reporters, and shout out to Hazel May, were able to ask Ross Atkins specifically about this report. And he said he still has hope and then an agreement. That's how I feel. And he said he spoke to Anthony Santander, saying that he feels that they can really get a deal done. And if you forget, Anthony Santander said himself on Instagram in someone's podcast that one of the reasons he signed with the Toronto Blue Jays for 5 to 6 years is because he was under the assumption that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was going to extend in Toronto. So you pair that with this report here, Ross Atkins coming out and saying what he did, Mark Shapiro March 20th coming out and saying that he believes the Jays are going to extend Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You date back to March 17th, saying the Blue Jays are planning to make a new offer for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at that 14-year, $550 million threshold. Everybody wants Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to get extended, and it makes a lot of sense as to why this would ultimately happen before opening day. Because for one, can you imagine, there's a lot of discourse on Twitter about how, Vladdy, if you get extended during the introduction ceremony, all these different things. Of course, tomorrow is going to be the day where it's opening day. It is what John Schneider called a holiday, and then everybody should be watching all these different things. It would be a time for the Blue Jays to announce that. Of course, that's unrealistic. I don't think they're going to announce it during the player introductions. But that being said, if they can get this done throughout the night tonight into tomorrow morning, the vibe going into the game tomorrow would be 10 times higher. And it's already going to be a fantastic atmosphere. But this is big. And we have some more things as well here. And this is one that's very interesting from Shai Davidi. Now, you can see here, reports state the Blue Jays are doing everything they can to reach an extension with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Shai Davidi joins MLB tonight with the latest. And that's from Shai Davidi saying the Jays are doing, quote, everything they can, end quote, to reach an extension, which also comes from the Mike Rodriguez report here. And if you watch this, he basically goes on to say that, of course, there's no guarantee that a deal gets done, but it makes a ton of sense for the Blue Jays and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at this juncture to be going all in to get this extension done before 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow when the Jays start. Because naturally, when the season starts, it's going to be, naturally much more difficult to extend any sort of player because you're in the middle of the season and the season has officially started. And obviously, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. gave his deadline date February 18th, and Ross wouldn't comment on whether or not that specific deadline date. Have they had conversations since then? Which ultimately means yes, they have. And it seems from the vibe we're getting here that they absolutely have had conversations and are still having conversations with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And that's why they said it's not helpful to speak publicly about these negotiations, because if there wasn't any negotiations, he would probably just go ahead and say that. But there's been multiple reports now, and you have Schneider coming out and saying there's a good chance and there's mutual interest that a deal, would get done here. But again, it is still the number, still hasn't been met. There's a number that gets the deal done. There's a number that the Jays have. They need to either meet somewhere in the middle or one side needs to come closer. And it would probably have to be Ross Atkins' side here with the front office. And that's going to be a very interesting thing. I mean, you look at his stats, putting up a 6.2 WAR last year. And again, there is something to be said about, Bo Bichette. He's entering his contract year. There hasn't been any talks, according to Bo, with the front office about an extension. There's been no rumors about Bo being extended because the front office clearly has their priority on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And if they can come out, you give Vladimir Guerrero Jr. extended, you have Bo Bichette's contract here, you have a bunch of different pieces now in a weak AL East, the weakest it's been in a very long time when it comes to actual top heaviness. Usually the AL East is very top heavy. You have a couple teams that are very good, not top heavy in the sense of the division is not close, because the division is always extremely close, but top heavy in the sense of there's usually teams that are clearly above the rest. And you could argue the Red Sox and Yankees are above the Jays. But regardless of that, this is the time for the Jays to really go all in here. And it seems like, according to Shai Davidi, Ross Atkins himself, Mike Rodriguez, and of course Hector Gomez, a deal could be on the horizon here. We're going to keep you up to date all the way through. If a deal does, of course, happen, we'll be on it. The first one's on it for you all. So make sure to stay tuned for that. But it's going to be interesting. A couple other updates now as well as we approach opening day, because we are getting very, very close. And it's been a long off season, no playoff baseball. There was really, and even for the tail half of the last season, there wasn't much to be excited about. We have a completely fresh slate. The Blue Jays are ready to rumble. And quick notes from Ross Atkins on a couple guys, including Vladdy again. There's no doubt that Vladdy wants to be in Toronto, and that's important to us. Hopefully, it will line us with him, or line with us and him. Sorry, that shares the perspective of the contracts. A lot of conversation about contracts, and I ultimately think that where there's smoke, there's fire. And in this case, I'm hoping we're not getting thrown for another loop. I think there's a real chance a deal gets done here. And we're going to keep you up to date with all the latest news as it pertains to that. So make sure to hit the subscribe button. A couple other things here as well. Ahead of tomorrow night's game, an interesting comment has come out from Alex Cora, believe it or not, of all people here. And it is interesting. He came out on the radio show in Boston and said he sees the Jays as one of their biggest threats in the American League East, which, again, manager of the Red Sox. It is interesting because I think a lot of teams in the AL East now are starting to realize that the Jays are scary at the very least. Of course, you have the veteran pitching staff, which I think is going to be the biggest turning point for this team. Either the pitching staff's going to be great, the team's going to be competing for a wild card spot, or the pitching staff falls off and the team starts to plummet down the standings. And to see another manager come out and say, okay, the Jays are a real threat. You added Santander, you added Jeff Hoffman, you added Andres Gimenez, you added a bunch of guys, Jimmy Garcia back, Nick Sandlin in the trade. It's going to be very interesting. And you have guys like Alan Roden, who Ross is very up and excited about. Some have the focus at another level, and he's one of them. You don't have to worry about work ethic. That's Alan Roden, and we're finally there, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to keep you up to date all season long, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. And the Jays play tomorrow afternoon. It's going to be very interesting to see what lineups they run with. We'll keep you up to date all the way through. Cheers.